So another thing that has been an increasing problem, and again, that's been increasingly panned by general audiences, is the fact that they come out with so much stuff, they spend so much money, but they want it to come out so fast that the VFX studios can't keep up, and it's led to just increasingly shoddy work. And of course, now I think they voted to unionize, so that's going on because they have been just overworked, not paid overtime. So I actually didn't watch Ant-Man and the Quantumania, whatever, but I have seen clips, and oh my goodness, as far as the VFX goes, what was that? What's that character? Modoc? Oh, that looks so cringe. That looks so bad. I think they actually pushed that out. They switched dates. So the Marvels switched dates with the Ant-Man sequel. The article says the schedule swap with the Marvels had left the Ant-Man sequel in a squeeze, pushing up its post-production schedule by 4.5 months. Yeah, so it was basically a lot of stuff was unfinished, and it goes on to say that critics weren't the only ones dismayed. Fed up with 14-hour days and no overtime, Marvel VFX workers voted unanimously to unionize in September, sparking an industry-wide trend. The year 2023 was the straw that broke the camel's back, says former Marvel Studios VFX assistant coordinator Anna George, who appeared before the Congressional Labor Caucus on October 19th to testify about the studio's untenable deadlines and working conditions. The pay and long hours at Marvel were the reason we had to start our unionization process there. The conditions were completely unsustainable. This was really sad, is that they're working so hard. They had them under these insane deadlines, and they didn't have the story to back this up. So it's just like all that work that they did. Yeah, it was panned, but they put them in these awful positions. They're moving around these deadlines. They're moving around entire films. The deadline for Ant-Man was moved up 4.5 months. So that's gotta be so frustrating. And not getting any overtime. I mean, that would have been another thing. If they at least get overtime, they get paid. And at the end of the day, they didn't have the story there. So the other part of this, the other half that makes this film what it is, wasn't doing their part of the job by creating a good story. You not only had a bad story, you also had unfinished and rushed VFX. I don't know if that's such an issue with Star Wars when it comes to that, but most of their stuff looks cheap. They have some really good scenes, but then there's ones that look so incredibly cheap. Like I said before with Obi-Wan, they're just out in a materials yard somewhere or some dump, some construction site. Yeah, so they're talking about like these VFX issues and who was in charge of that. There was a Victoria Alonso who oversaw the studio's physical production, post-production, VFX, and animation, that she was recently fired. And the article says that she was kind of like their scapegoat in regards to why everything was so bad. Well, it was her fault. Some internal sources suggest Alonso was a scapegoat and point to the She-Hulk VFX issues as a symptom of a deeper rot, namely a lack of oversight on script development. In the original arc of She-Hulk, a flashback of star Tatiana Maslany, a flashback of her transformation into her Hulk character didn't take place until episode 8, the penultimate episode. So after Marvel's Brain Trust watched the footage, it realized the scene needed to happen in the pilot episode so that audiences could see more of the character's backstory early. That meant that the VFX team was tasked with fixing the mess in post-production. So they filmed it like that, and then they had to fix it in post-production. You had to reshoot some things, I assume. The so-called bad VFX we see was because of half-baked scripts, says one person involved with She-Hulk. That is not Victoria, that is Kevin. And even above Kevin, those issues should be addressed in pre-production. The timeline is not allowing the Marvel executives to sit with the material. And we were saying this, it was bad at the time. We were saying it was bad. This was not a good show. It was so cringe. I remember their writers saying that they didn't know how to write a legal show, like a lawyer-focused show. They didn't know how to write that. So they pivoted away from that. How do you have a show called She-Hulk Attorney at Law and you don't know how to write for a legal show at all? Like the article says, this is an issue from the top and even obviously above Kevin. These are issues with just hiring incompetent people. And not just that, don't have a system where everyone communicates with each other. You just have this free-for-all of incompetent people and everyone else is suffering. Not just the fans, but everyone else involved in trying to get these projects out. They're not happy. But twerking. Yeah, twerking was in. Oh, that's great. Great writing. Yeah, they didn't know how to write, period, but I just thought that was so funny. how they specifically said, yeah, we don't know how to write legal shows, so it's literally called She-Hulk Attorney at Law. She is a lawyer. That's gonna come up. All the while, Marvel was bleeding money with a single episode of She-Hulk costing some $25 million, dwarfing the budget of a final season episode of HBO's Game of Thrones, but without a similar zeitgeist bang. $25 million an episode. Was that all just for doing the CGI She-Hulk? Because honestly, at the time, I thought, I've seen comics, she just looks like a very well-built woman. And I feel like you could have just hired an MMA fighter or just someone who's an athlete, a bodybuilder type athlete to play this character. Like, I don't feel like you needed to have a CGI person. There's definitely women who could have done it that could have portrayed the She-Hulk part. Obviously, that would have saved a ton of money. I think honestly it would have been better at the end. But no, we're gonna throw $25 million an episode. We're gonna give Obi-Wan series a paltry $90 million because it's just insane. This is the problem of getting inexperienced TV writers. It's a craft that requires experience. Hire the right people. This would be easy. Like I said, there's some things in this article that are trying to, in a way, make excuses for them. Like, oh, there are things out of their control, but clearly there were things that were well within their control. That is now coming to light more in this part of the article that's saying that they're just trying to pump content out as quick as they can, and they don't want to do the work to headhunt for people that are qualified, that are passionate and knowledgeable about the source material, about this franchise and these characters, and that are qualified to run a television show encompassing that are well qualified for that. You need experienced people. You can't just throw money at a production and hope that it's going to come out well. There's just so many factors that go into creating an awesome show, an amazing film. At every level, you need to have the right people. You need to have qualified, competent people. It's such a no-brainer. Such a no-brainer. And things that are just well within their control. $25 million, and they couldn't even afford to pay the FX team overtime. Exactly. They're already throwing like tons of money, and their poor VFX team are just overworked, no overtime. It's just insane. Like, I'm sure people at one point would have been dying to be involved in the MCU project. And now I can see why competent creators probably wouldn't want to touch this now, because they don't want to work in this environment that's just so chaotic. It goes on to say that the August 2022 series premiere of She-Hulk at the El Capitan Theater foreshadowed what was to come 6 months later at the Quantumania bow. The She-Hulk special effects were out of focus in multiple scenes. The writer of the article continues, there are signs that the flood of product is leading people to tune out. I'm not prepared to call it a permanent fall, but based on the numbers that go with Marvel podcasts, Marvel-based articles, friends who do Marvel-based video coverage, all of these numbers are significantly down, says Joanna Robinson, co-author of the New York Times bestseller MCU: The Reign of Marvel Studios, who is a writer and podcaster at The Ringer. The quality is suffering. In 2019, at the peak, if you put Marvel Studios in front of something, people were like, oh, that brand means quality. That association is no longer the case because there have been so many projects that felt half-baked and undercooked. And they just want to double down too, because people know this. People behind the scenes knew that this was not good quality. There were half-baked scripts. During the production of She-Hulk, there were issues. They knew this at the time, and fans were telling you their grievances. But they keep just doubling down on this approach of hiring people, hiring unqualified people, and rushing stuff out. And I don't even know why. Why are you trying to rush stuff out to begin with? If you take more time to craft a quality show, won't that just be worth it in the end? Because fans will be happy, you'll get the fan engagement, which will obviously then lead to revenue. We've been saying it this whole time. They just thought that we just didn't get it, that we just didn't get She-Hulk. Like, oh, the character was always kind of like out there and the stories were always kind of weird. Yeah, that's no excuse for half-baked scripts and characters that are unrelatable and insufferable.